8:22 a.m. August 16th, I think. Yeah, 2026 Sunday. Yeah, here you go, breakfast time. Look at that. Kind of in a hurry. I want to make sure that I'm ready to go. Oh, and no crunchy peanut butter today. Oh, oops. There you go. Okay, seriously, where is everyone? It was so weird. Last night, the sleep stream, there was like no viewing as far as like waking up to anyone being like there. And no likes, which is like, I don't know. It's so weird. There are like some comments, but usually not all of them were weird. But last night, yeah, like, most of them were like weird ones. Lots of times, it's people like there's like a couple people who are like, "Hi." Those were like the usual ones. But yeah, I don't know. Lately, it's been so strange. Strange. I don't know why. Hello. Oh, great. Hello. NS Gamer 2211. Hello. Angela Borhot 278. How you guys doing?
When someone finds out I'm a clinical psychologist, the number one question I get is, are you analyzing me? It's also the number one question you want me to answer. Here's the honest answer. Yes, I am. And no, I'm not. Let's start with the yes. As a clinical psychologist, I focus on understanding thoughts, feelings, and actions that are out of the ordinary. If I see someone in public moving in unexpected ways, speaking loudly, and saying things that don't make sense, my training kicks in. I automatically question if they're under the influence of a drug or are experiencing a manic episode of bipolar depression, have a tic, or something else. I can't help it. When I see something out of the norm, it automatically triggers a network of memories related to everything I've learned about clinical psychology. This is how memory works, and we all have some kind of unconscious bias. But let's replay what I just said. I automatically question if you're under the influence of a drug or are
you
experiencing
reading
a
a book?
manic episode
No.
of bipolar depression, have a tic, or something else. Notice how I couldn't give you an exact explanation.
I'm listening
What's
to
happening.
How to
You can't understand what
Psychoanalyze.
you're thinking and feeling just by looking
Well, this
at you.
guy,
And
he
you
says
know what's going on in your head and what you're
how
experiencing in your body.
how do
And when you find out,
psychologists
science.
analyze
This
people?
gets us to the no part of it. As clinical psychologists, people come to me because of problems. Not feeling like yourself, a lot of fights with a partner, school or work isn't going well, or you can't do something you need to do, stuff like that. I ask questions and eventually figure out a diagnosis. Maybe it's anxiety, depression, an eating disorder, or something else. But a diagnosis is just the beginning of my work. A diagnosis tells me a lot about the problems you're experiencing and what type of treatments might work, but it doesn't tell me anything about why you're experiencing these problems or how we can customize a treatment.
Where are you guys from?
That's why I dig deeper, and that's where the real analyzing comes in. I talk to my patients about their past to identify origins to their problems. Things like a genetic roots, important events in their past, what their family was like, where they grew up, and important parts of their culture. I'll also ask about recent changes that might have triggered these problems or made these problems worse. But the real magic of a clinical psychologist is how we identify mechanisms. Mechanisms are the things that cause your problems. Think of them like an engine. When this engine turns on, it causes all these problems to occur. This engine was built up over time by these origins and was turned on by the key found in your perceptions. Remember when I talked about my own social anxiety disorder? Here's how it looks wrapped in this conceptualization. What's super important to understand is the same problem can be caused by different mechanisms.
Mechanisms. I'm gonna download this.
Misbehaving in class. But misbehaving can be caused by a number of mechanisms, like difficulty organizing information that is being taught during class, not getting enough sleep, getting attention from other students, feeling unsafe like their kid is misbehaving
Lebanon.
in class.
Oh
But misbehaving
wow.
can be caused by a number of mechanisms, like difficulty organizing. Understand is the same problem can be caused by different lots of people.
Intolerance of uncertainty, perfectionism, fear of evaluation. Oh my gosh, this is such an interesting list.
Lots of parents come to me because their kid is misbehaving in class. But misbehaving can be caused by a number of mechanisms, like difficulty organizing information that is being taught during class, not getting enough sleep, getting attention from other students, feeling unsafe around others, trying to suppress thoughts that might be flipping up in your head, or maybe something else. I know I keep saying maybe something else, but that's human behavior. It's complicated, and it's hard to find one simple explanation for why anyone does what they do. I'll make a decision about misbehaving mechanisms based on what the kids told me, their parents' perspective, what the school says, the current scientific research on the topic, and my experience treating these problems. Then in treatment, everything I do will target this mechanism, the root cause of the problems. Through this whole process, it's all collaborative. My patient and I do it together. I don't keep secrets from my patients when it comes to what I think is causing their problems. I'll tell them what I think is going on and check in with them to see if it makes sense given what they're experiencing. I might be the expert on clinical psychology, but they're the expert on them. This is why I hate the question, are you analyzing me? I can't analyze you without you because I can't read your mind, and I would never even try to do that without your permission or your cooperation. That's why psychologists are prohibited from analyzing public figures. Seeing someone on TV doesn't give you any information about what they're thinking or feeling without their permission. It's unethical to even try. Some clinical psychologists hate this question so much that they'll pretend to be someone else in social situations. Seriously, there's an article about a colleague of mine who tells people he's an accountant when he's sitting on the airplane because he just doesn't want to deal with this whole issue. The next time you meet a clinical psychologist, please don't ask them if they're analyzing you. Instead, ask them a more open-ended question like, what's it like to be a psychologist? I promise it'll lead to a much more interesting conversation. What questions do you have about clinical psychology? Let me know in the comments below.
Let him be. Oh, San Gog Tim Selena. Oh, I'm just having breakfast.
I'm Lewis Rowe. I'm a clinical psychologist from Sydney, Australia. For the longest time as a student, I knew I wanted to be a psychologist, and all I knew was that psychologists help people do therapy, they work in mental health, and I didn't actually know what a psychologist did until I reached my master's, which is literally 5 years into my university study. Today I'm going to tell you the ins and outs, what actually happens, and what are the different stages, what do we actually get trained in, because I think we don't actually get told until we're literally 5 years in. If you're new here, hi, my name's Roy. I post weekly videos on Thursday, so if you're interested in psychology, therapy, what it's like to be a psychologist, or just like the field in general, then subscribe and join me for these weekly videos. Alright, so firstly, there are many different types of psychologists. When you think about psychologists, you're probably thinking about a clinical or a general psychologist, and primarily our role involves delivering some sort of psychological treatment to someone with a mental health disorder. However, while this is the one that most people think about when they think about psychology or therapy, there are other specializations. There are actually 9 areas of practice endorsement, including organizational psychology, where you go into organizations and you help them streamline. For instance, you get sent to an accounting company and your job is to make a team of 40 people more efficient. Your job is to figure out who are the key players and who actually help the team and who's not so effective. So you help with firing and hiring. You might help with remuneration and how much to pay each person to motivate them. So there's organizational psychology. There's other specialities such as sport exercise psychology. They work with elite athletes. They work with how to get the most out of them. They might also work with athletes at the end of their sporting career and how to deal with that grief or that period of transition, moving away from this kind of endeavor, super high intensity, maybe very famous in the public eye, to not doing that sport anymore. So that's like sport and exercise. Then we've got like educational and developmental psychology that help all in like IQ testing for ADHD, learning difficulties, really figuring out what's going on in someone's brain and actually diagnosing a learning disorder or mental health disability, something like that. Then you've got forensic psychologists. They go into jails and correctional facilities. They are helping people who have had contact with some sort of forensic activity, criminal activity. Maybe they're doing more rehab type stuff. Maybe they're doing workshops on mental health and stress and emotion regulation. So there are many, many types of psychologists. I think by far the most common, and this is reflected in the training pathways, is for instance, forensic psychology is offered in like 2 unis, whereas clinical is offered in like 5 or 6 unis, just in like New South Wales.
Where do you
so
think
I think
I'm
the most common
from?
is general psychologist or clinical psychologist. And if you're interested in the study pathways and like how to get into them stuff, the last video I did about pathways is going to outline all of the study requirements. So the APS is the Australian Psych Society, and they have an official definition for what a psychologist does. And today I'm going to talk about the like therapeutic clinical psychologist. And it says psychologists study individuals and groups to better understand how people, communities, and societies function, and devise ways to empower them and help them thrive through understanding mental and biological functions that drive behavior, which is a very broad kind of title. And so I'm going to go into literally the areas that we study during masters, and literally like what I do day to day. First bit is assessment, and assessment basically means we're trying to figure out what it is about a person, a complete stranger that we don't know anything about, what it is that they're coming to us with, what is the core issue here. So assessment might involve questionnaires, so like a mood questionnaire, trying to figure out what their level of their mood is, like low mood, high mood, and then we know based on their outcome of the questionnaire what they compare to the rest of the population on. So we might do questionnaires, we might do them on things like anxiety levels, types of anxiety, we could do it on the way they see the world, belief questionnaires, and so you guys have all probably done some sort of questionnaire
Nope.
As psychologists, we're trained to figure out what questionnaires, or one or multiple, that we need to use in order to figure out what's going on with this person. So the second way we kind of assess is through neuropsych testing, which is literally running tests to figure out where people are in their brain function. So we do tests like figuring out their processing speed, or their working memory function, or their like ability to learn English or maths, and there are tests that we get trained in to figure that out as well. And so that's another little factor in
Got
assessment.
it.
There's also obviously the therapeutic assessment where you actually meet the person one-on-one. Usually it's an hour or an hour and a half, and you learn actually the way that you ask questions and what are good questions to ask to figure out what's going on. So for instance, a lot of people know maybe when to reach out to a psychologist. They know, when you feel really down, maybe maybe when you feel like you're in a low mood, they would go to a psychologist, but often they don't actually know why or what's going on or what causes that. So it's our job to actually figure out from people just saying things like, there's poor sleep, I'm not eating as well, I'm getting stomach aches, I'm getting tunnel vision, occasionally when I'm really stressed out, I actually can't remember. We're trying to figure out and piece together their symptoms and try and ask the right questions to get the full picture, because that's going to help us with the next step, which is diagnosis. Assessment is basically like trying to figure out what's going on, trying to gather information from the person so that it helps us with stage 2, which is diagnosis. I'm going to tell you why there's such an issue with self-diagnosis. As mental health professionals, we spend a lot of our master's training learning all of the different diagnoses, and they all fit into this massive textbook called the DSM-5, and this is the version number 5, but there are 4 other versions, and they keep updating it based on the newest psychological disorders, or
I'm your neighbor in British Columbia.
Says is the mental health disorder. So this changes with culture, changes with society. It used to be that homosexuality was actually classed as a mental health disorder, and now that's been updated. So our current view of mental health is that we have this textbook and there's a list of diagnoses, and we learn the symptoms for all of them. Yeah, or at least we try and do most of them, or the most common ones. The issue with self-diagnosis is often people have a list of symptoms and they go to a specific diagnosis like depression, and they take up all of them and they're like, oh, I meet all the criteria and therefore I have depression. They don't have the mental health training to have understood all of the other things that could be causing this same diagnosis. And so that's the issue of just using like confirmation as diagnosis. We need to know what else could have a similar profile of symptoms, because mental health is such, like, it's so many crossovers and so many diagnoses have actually really, really similar symptoms. We want to know exactly what symptom profile fits each mental health diagnosis. So a really big part of our training is also about differential diagnosis. What separates bipolar from depression? What separates bipolar from schizoaffective disorder? What separates schizoaffective disorder from schizophrenia? Because all of them will have some identical types of symptoms. And when I say diagnosis, I don't mean that we necessarily have to give everyone a DSM-5 mental health disorder when they come to psychology. Oftentimes I actually don't even tell the client the diagnosis if it's not helpful. Yeah, so diagnoses are helpful as a way of maybe joining a community if that's helpful. Maybe it's a good way to tell other people what's going on with you. For some people it's good having a diagnosis so they feel like, hey, I actually have a label and a way to understand this, as opposed to just feeling like I'm doing the wrong thing, it's just with me, I'm just bad. So diagnosis can be helpful, but another part of our job is figuring out if the diagnosis is helpful and whether that diagnosis needs to actually be relayed and understood, or whether we just kind of go ahead and treat it and
Tell me about this.
Borderline personality disorder is characterized by a lot of emotion dysregulation. Emotions, due to early childhood trauma.
Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Especially, thanks. Especially thank you for commenting, because it gives me something to work with. Yeah, I'll do a sleep stream tonight. I don't think I'll do any other ones. Maybe VR chat. I don't know. Yeah, so I'll see your comments in the next stream. Thank you for joining. Bye.